What's up, Dose of Dion? What's up, Red? Hey, my name is Michael Banks. Please vote for me every day at FordHallOfFans.com. Boot up.
The city's been down, and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Let's talk a little bit about that guy, Charles Harris, the edge defender for the Detroit Lions, outside linebacker / defensive end, and whether or not the Lions, we think, will re-sign him this offseason, or I should say at least offer him a contract this offseason, or if they'll let him walk. All right, now we did do this first look at the Lions' upcoming free agents for the 2022 offseason, where we rolled through all 30-plus players, exclusive rights free agents, restricted free agents, unrestricted free agents, and we made kind of early predictions on each player, but I want to dive into each of these guys individually and talk about them in a little bit more detail. Now, as I told you guys in the last video about Logan Hall, we are going to be doing that series breakdown of each positional group. However, I may mix it up a little bit. I'm thinking about doing it for front 7 and then secondary, making it like a 2-parter for the defense instead of going every single positional group like interior defensive line. So we may put more things into one there, which could lead to a longer video, but that's kind of been the thing recently, is long videos around here. So we might as well just keep the trend going. Touch on salary cap and things like that when we get into that video, and we'll take a look at each player, but there's a couple of free agents that are set to hit the market this offseason for the Lions that I wanted to talk about individually. And yes, it is early. Things can definitely change, but I wanted to start with Charles Harris because he has a market value that's been thrown out there. He's coming off the best season of his career, and he could be one of the more expensive, if not the most expensive, re-signing that the Lions could have this offseason. And it's a really interesting situation because you take a look at the draft and where the Lions are sitting and who they may take. Then you have a guy like Trey Flowers who's under contract and Romeo coming back. So there's a lot that really goes into this one. Charles Harris coming off his best season as an NFL player. And the way he put it is that he is looking for stability. That's what he's looking for right now. And that makes sense. He said, at this point in my career, I'm looking for stability because he hasn't really had that. I mean, he was drafted as a first-round pick, and then there was people calling him a bust. It didn't really work out. He's been with Atlanta, and now here he is with the Lions. We signed him to this prove-it 1-year deal this offseason, 1 year, $1.75 million. It was a cheap deal. We didn't know how big his role was going to be. We expected to have Trey Flowers and Romeo as our starting outside linebackers. Remember when we signed him, Sheila Ford-Ham said, get after the quarterback. You know, that's your job. This is why we're paying you this money. And he did. And he got stepped into a huge role because Trey Flowers and Romeo missed the majority of the season. Romeo Core coming off that big extension, and Trey Flowers for really the 2nd straight year missing a lot of time for the Lions. So he stepped into a huge role. And this year was anything but normal because you had the COVID stuff. I mean, and that's probably going to continue. But you had a lot of craziness this year. But one thing with Charles Harris that I love is that he played in every single game. Didn't start all of them. He started only 14 of the 17 games, but he played in every single game. And there's just not a lot of guys you could say that about this season. So I absolutely love that part of it with Charles Harris. But statistically, he put up some numbers. And one thing about edge rushers, outside linebackers, just pass rushers in general, they get paid. It's as simple as that. If you're a pass rusher, you're going to get money. Open up that checkbook and write you a check. NFL looks at it as such a valuable position. Now, there's certain teams that do it a little bit different. You look at New England, you look at teams like Miami, you know, they kind of went heavy secondary, it's that background, it's that New England background to build from the back and out. I mean, there's different ways to build. Or you look at there's other teams that do spend money at that edge position or highly on their defensive line. For the Lions, they have a lot of money wrapped up in those spots. We'll take a look at the contracts in a second. But Charles Harris coming off this fantastic season, we're talking about a 6'3", 252-pound outside linebacker / defensive end. I guess you could kind of put him into both categories because depending on personnel that we had, we kind of played a little bit more of a 4-3. He played with his hand in the dirt, but he could do both. He played hand in the dirt usually mostly in the past, but he also played in 2-point stance. Wasn't extremely, I would say, versatile along the defensive line where he would line up. I mean, there was a few times where he'd get in the inside, specifically on passing downs if he was going to do it, not really early downs. Wasn't a ton of like inside versatility. A lot of that has to do with his size. But you want to talk about getting the best out of your player. That's what Aaron Glenn did. And the opportunity was there, and he met the opportunity, which was awesome for him. A guy that we knew had a lot of talent when we brought him in. It just hasn't worked out up to this point in his career. And he said the initial meeting that he had with Aaron Glenn was great, because Aaron Glenn sat him down. He said, okay, what works for you? You know, what doesn't work for you? Look at the numbers for this year. You know, you start off with kind of the basic numbers, 65 combined tackles, which is a lot, 7.5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, 34 pressures. He played in every game, so he did play a lot of snaps this year. I think like 76% of our defensive snaps, somewhere in that range. 76, 872 defensive snaps. So he did play a lot. But he put up good production. I mean, especially for 1 year, 1.75 million. I mean, you wouldn't expect that kind of production. I know some of that is just the amount of playing time, but he still put up good numbers for us. Pro Football Focus, they gave him good grades this season. 68.7 overall grade, 61.5 against the run, and then a 78.6 as a pass rusher, which is really darn high. PFF is what it is. I mean, there's some of it that I can agree with, some of it I don't. It's just another stat that I think you can throw out there. The most thing that I rely upon is just watching a film. But I mean, hey, the numbers are cool. And you know, it's just an extra way to look at it. You also take a look at ESPN. Top players by position in terms of pass rush win rate, you know, run stop win rate. And according to ESPN, he was 6th this season in run stop win rate in the NFL. At 29%. That's impressive. I mean, he was above guys like TJ Watt, who's making $28 million a season, which is insane. He's above your Joey Bosa's. He's above your Von Miller's. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty good. 29%. I'll take that. Take a look at Pro Football Reference. They list him with 34 pressures, which is a little bit more than what Romeo had last season. So that, you know, I'll take that. Or if you could look at Pro Football Focus version of a pressure, they had him with 52 on the season, which would put him top 20 in the National Football League. They also had him with a pass rush win rate of 17.4%, which will put him at 17th in the league. All right, so overall, I mean, his numbers were there. And for that kind of price tag, that works big time. The thing is that won't be his price tag this next offseason. And like he said, he's looking for that stability. He wants to be locked up on a long-term deal. And the team that's usually going to give out that deal knows that they're going to have him on the field and they're going to rely on him. So that's what he's looking for. The question is, will the Lions give him that? And the numbers, they work. They were not just good for a guy that makes $1.75 million. They were good for his projected market value of what it's going to be. So his projected market value is $8.6 million. $8.6 million a year, all right? They're projecting, according to Over the Cap, a 4-year, $8.6 million a year deal. That's nowhere near the top. Like I said, TJ Watt's making $28 million a year, which is insane. But at the same time, he also tied the most sacks in NFL history this year. So I guess, you know, it wasn't a bad move. When you compare some of the players around that similar price range and their production that they put up this season, and again, it was tough because of COVID and injuries and things like that, he definitely performed up to that level, if not higher than that level of that market value that they're projecting him going forward. And it's a little bit difficult to look at it like that because this last offseason, we know that there was a lot of short-term deals given out across the league. The salary cap was lower. It's expected to go up, which also makes the $8.6 million deal feel a little bit less than it did this past offseason. Look at a guy like Carl Nassib, who this season he only played in 13 games, 6 pressures, and 21 combined tackles and 1.5 sacks. Jadeveon Clowney, he was on a 1-year, $8 million deal, and he put up some numbers this season, but he also had a lot more help around him, too. I mean, he was in that 4-3 Cleveland Browns defense, which also includes a guy like Myles Garrett on the other side, where, unfortunately for Charles Harris, he didn't have that luxury of really having that consistent presence on the other side. I mean, to start the season, he wasn't a starter. It was Romeo and it was Trey. But then we lose Romeo Core, and they think, okay, who's going to have Trey? And then Trey went down. So you didn't really have that. He didn't have that consistency across from him. And, of course, on the D-line, you had a lot of young players, and you had a lot of inconsistency there as well. Jadeveon Clowney this past season, on that 1-year deal, he definitely lived up to it. The guy had 9 sacks, 31 combined tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 32 pressures. Technically, that's still 2 less pressures than Charles Harris, especially considering the fact that he only played in 14 games. Compared to a guy like Devon Kennard. Now, his cap hit for next season is over $9 million, but the current deal that he's on is only $6.7 million a year, so it's a little bit lower. He only started 3 of those games, but he had 0 sacks, 24 combined tackles, 5 pressures, 7 tackles for loss. And a lot of this is he had a lot of snaps as well. Wouldn't have had that without some of his injuries, but it also led to an opportunity. And like I said, he took advantage of the opportunity. Dante Fowler this season, 4.5 sacks, 36 combined tackles, 17 pressures. So you could say he outperformed that. Him and Hassan Reddick played almost the same amount of snaps this past season. I would say these are kind of comparable. Reddick had more sacks with 11. He had very similar amount of tackles with 68, 3 more. He had 1 less pressure than Charles Harris, and he played in 854 snaps compared to Charles Harris's 806 72 snaps. There's different ways to build a team. You look at a team like the Patriots, they don't spend a lot of money usually at that position because they have their inside linebackers. They're versatile, so they'll put him outside. I think that's part of the reason we drafted a guy like Jelani Tavai, but I don't need to go into that, you know, and we did. We moved him to outside linebacker, just didn't go very well. You put him so, you know what, let's not go down that road again. The point is there's different ways to build a team. And going back to a study done in 2017, it shows that with pressure, and again, everybody's version of pressure can be a little bit different, a team would average negative 0.32 points per play with pressure, and without pressure, they would average plus 0.21 points per play. Look at a quarterback's production with pressure versus without pressure. Again, this is that 2017 study, so it is a little bit ago. Without pressure per play, they would average 7.2 yards per play when the quarterback is kept clean, versus when under pressure, a quarterback would average 3.8 yards per play. So there's also a very big difference there. You have to have both. I mean, that's just how it is. You can't just have pressure and an awful secondary, and you can't have an awful pass rush and have a good secondary. You're probably still going to have some issues. You do have to have them complement each other. 1.83% sack rate versus an interior that had a 0.97 sack rate. So you had a higher chance of getting a sack from getting pressure with the edge position versus from the interior of the defensive line. Also statistics that show that secondary is more important in terms of slowing down the productivity of a passing offense, but edge rushers are, of course, much more important to stop the run than the secondary would be, which makes a ton of sense, of course. But stopping the run is where it starts. You can't stop the run. You can't really do anything defensively. What would it mean to re-sign a guy like Charles Harris? What would we be looking at financially? Now, this stuff is going to change. There's different ways to sign contracts. We know that there's going to be cuts. There's going to be restructures. There's going to be trades. There's going to be different ways to lay out contracts where you could put less money on this year, like Romeo last year, right? Romeo last year had a $4.5 million cap hit versus this season he's set to have a $14.5 million cap hit. So you can also set up contracts different. And we'll get to the entire outlook when we get closer to the draft and we start to go through free agencies and mock off season stuff like that. But basically for that positional group alone, last season the Detroit Lions were 7th in the National Football League spending at the edge position. Okay, so we're talking Trey Flowers, Romeo Okwara, Charles Harris, Julian Okwara, Austin Bryant, a lot of rookie deals there. And you're probably thinking, well, how is it that much? But that's a lot of money for all the rookie deals that we currently have. Yeah, it is a lot of money, and most of that comes from Trey Flowers' contract. Romeo didn't have a huge cap hit in 2021. It was like $4.5 million. So there's not much there. It is Trey Flowers who made up $19.9 million. So pretty much all of that was on Trey Flowers' contract last season, and Lions couldn't do anything with that. So that's why so much money was technically spent at the edge position last year. Now, that's going to change because next year, Romeo's going to be on the cap hit for $14.5 million. But last year, it made sense to do that if you're getting out extensions because of where the cap was at, because the money we had to spend. We couldn't really put $14 million. We couldn't put $10 million down last year. That would have been very difficult on Romeo Okwara because of where we were at financially. So we pushed more to the back end, which made sense. You knew the salary cap was going to go up. There was going to be differences. You're going to have more money to spend. So it changed things up. That just means Romeo's going to be much more expensive, which is hopefully a good thing because hopefully that means he's playing next year because he really didn't play this year. So at least it was only $4.5 million for a guy that really didn't play this season. I know you can't control that, but I'm just saying. All right. So Trey Flowers is a very big part of that. Now, looking at next year for the Lions, 2022, they are on the books currently to be 4th in the National Football League spending at the edge position. And now look, the Lions are going to spend at the edge position. Packers are first. They have top pass rushers over there. I mean, Rashawn Gary's on his rookie deal, but you guys have Darius Smith, Preston Smith, 49ers are way up there, Nick Bosa, you know, those guys. Chicago Bears are way up there as well. And then they have us at 4th. Those 3 of the NFC North teams in the top 4. Okay, interesting. Lions are going to spend money, I think, at these positions because of what Aaron Glenn told us coming into the year. We want pressure players. I mean, think about it. We literally dropped an extension on Romeo Okwara. Right? We dropped an extension for 3 years. What was it? $37 million for Romeo Okwara. And they didn't coach him once. I mean, they didn't coach him at all. They just looked at him having one good season and said, all right, 3 years, $37 million. And I'm not saying I disagree with it. I like the extension. But they're going to spend money at that spot if you ask me. A lot of that money, like I said, is coming from Romeo Okwara's contract and, of course, Trey Flowers. He would be on the books technically next season for $23 million cap hit. So those two guys really make up like $38 million of the 40. I mean, it's a lot that they make up together next season. And remember, that doesn't have Charles Harris under contract, right? So after that, it's a lot of rookie deals. Austin Bryant, Julian Okwara. It's those kind of guys. Austin Bryant, Julian Okwara, those would be your 4 guys that are under contract for next season at the edge position. The Lions could make some changes, you know, to mix this up a little bit, and I think they will. First off, cutting Trey Flowers. And I think they will cut Trey Flowers. Post-June 1st, pre-June 1st, there's going to have some options there. But let's say they did a pre-June 1st cut. Well, that would save them they would save them $10 million for 2022. All right, so you could take basically $10 million off of what you owe Trey Flowers. Now his dead cap would be about $12, $13 million. So you'd still be owing him that for next season because you're cutting him 2 years out of his deal. So you'd still be owing him that next season, but you do save $10 million. So I guess just take $10 million right off the top there. Now, Charles Harris, his market value is 4 years, $8.6 million per year. So it's about 4 years, 32, 33 million, kind of in that range. So let's just say hypothetically, we paid him $8.6 million a season and we paid him that for 2022. Well, if that was the case, that would still be technically saving money to go to Charles Harris and let Trey Flowers go. You'd be saving a little bit, but you'd be saving technically a little bit of money. You'd be looking at $38.3 million, which would maybe bump you down a spot in terms of the edge on where it's set right now. But yeah, you'd be paying a lot of money. Lions are basically locked into probably spending a lot of money at this spot because I don't see a Trey Flowers trade happening. Good thing is that they should not be spending a ton on cornerback or safety unless, you know, they went out and make some big signings like a big safety signing or something like that. But cornerback wise, I mean, it's extremely cheap right now because I think your most expensive guy is Okudah. Amani's on his rookie deal. AJ Parker's on his rookie deal. Jerry Jacobs is an undrafted free agent. And I think like a lot of these guys, if he's on his rookie deal, I mean, no one's like really getting paid like that in the cornerback room. Okudah is because he was a top 3 pick. This is where things get interesting for the Lions. And you throw in the fact that a lot of people believe we're going to take a top pass rusher. Now, no matter who you take with the second pick, let's say you sit the second pick, no matter who that guy is, the second pick is projected to be about $7.5 million. So if the Lions did draft an edge with the second pick, you know, and likely that'd be Kayvon or that would be Aiden. If they took one of those guys at the second pick, you would then be looking at basically having $45 million. Again, that's assuming you give Charles Harris 8.6 for this season. That's something the Lions will have to decide upon because at that point, Charles Harris may not even be a starter on your defense, and you're paying him $8.6 million a year if that top pick comes in and becomes the starter. Of course, if it's 8.6 a year, let's say it has to be that. Lions could do it like a Romeo deal. They could make it, I don't know, $4 million for this year and then make it $10 million for the next couple, right? They could do something like that to make his contract much easier this season. Now, I want to take a look at a few clips for this season for Charles Harris, number 53. He's going to be over here. You'll see him in a second. But definitely, I think, fit this scheme at such a high level. Now, the Lions try to bring in these guys and say, okay, what do you do best? Put you in a position to be successful. But they were able to put so much on his plate this season, whether it was run defense, pass rush, stunts, slants, drop into coverage, set the edge. They were able to put so much on his plate. I think he responded to really everything they asked him to do. One place I would say he may be a little bit limited is pre-snap, being able to line up like this, like Michael Brockers over a guard. Size-wise, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, on the passing downs, you can line him up in the inside. We saw that a few times, but maybe lacking some versatility there. However, outside of that, the ability to drop in coverage, set the edge, run down quarterbacks, pass rush, slants, stunts. I mean, he showed you really he could do everything that you would ask of him. And we asked pretty much everybody in the front seven to drop into coverage. I mean, of course, the inside linebackers, but on the defense line, everybody at one point this season, I will guarantee, dropped into coverage that played over 100 snaps. So let's take a look at a few clips here. This first one, we're just going to start with a pretty basic coverage drop from Charles Harris. You're going to see him out wide here against the tight end. And just that little ability, I think, is really nice. And he seemed very aware. I know he gave up 8 completions on 9 targets statistically, but very aware for a guy dropping into coverage for 255 pounds. At his combine, his ability to flip hips, work in space. I mean, he was really light on his toes for a guy that's 255 pounds. His change of direction. And you saw that when he was able to drop into coverage, and they could ask him to do that a ton. Another guy we saw him do that with a lot was Julian Okwara. But the one aspect of his game, and I know PFF doesn't love him here, but I really do. It's run defense. Now, one thing I think he can get a little bit maybe greedy. He can get caught sticking his head in, and then he can kind of lose his gap responsibility. But there's, to me, a lot to like about his run defense. So let's take a look here. A clip against the Rams. You can see him again wide in that 6 technique against the tight end. One thing about Charles that I noticed as a pass rusher, as a run defender, watching a lot of this film back, he does have kind of an inconsistent get off every edge in the league. Statistically, it is technically slower, like the advanced stats, getting off the snap. And there are reps where he'll get off late, and we'll actually see, I think, another one in here as well. This one, you could say he came off a little bit late, but I just like his ability to work laterally, you know, to work side to side. Here he is working against the tight end. He's very aggressive against the run. But then also, just look at this. Look at the way that he gets off the ball. So while maybe not the fastest, the way that he's able to get off the ball and stay low. You see how he stays low? He immediately wins the leverage battle, and then he's able to work out wide. Here he is making a play against Darrell Henderson against the Rams. Now, yes, there are games this year where he was less impactful, like the Rams game. You're playing at Andrew Whitworth, and in that game, they rotated him back and forth, right tackle, left tackle, moving him back and forth for matchups. Julian, Trey Flowers, there was no Romeo in this game. But it's also because you're playing the top pass protectors. And Whitworth, technically, he is very sound. Charles Harris is still very young, 26 years old. And you also take a look at a team like the Packers. David Bakhtiari, for the 3 drives he was in, did pretty well against him. I would say there's a couple reps where you say, okay, maybe that's a pressure. But he did pretty well against him. They're just very technically sound players. But you also got to keep in mind, they would chip block Charles Harris, because the Lions didn't really have a scary threat on the other side this season. We thought that'd be Romeo. We didn't have him. A lot of young guys in there. It starts with the run defense first, of course, but we just didn't have guys that really took a lot of pressure off of Charles Harris. So here he is working against Andrew Whitworth on the left side of your screen in the tight end. This is another run defensive rep because, again, I really like his run defense. You're going to have Cooper Kupp here. He's going to be asked to block. They ask him to do this a lot. He's laid off the line of scrimmage. You're going to see it. He's laid off the snap by far. Look how late he is off the snap. But it's that ability to move along the line of scrimmage, to move sideways, to stay low throughout the play, not stand straight up, so he can win that leverage. He can get that initial push on Cooper Kupp. And this is where he's at his best, I think, playing the backside of plays. I think he's really good the backside run defensively. That's where he thrives, chasing down players. Another athletic play. Versatility as a pass rusher. You know, you can line him up on the inside. I think he's better with his hand in the dirt. He's done that in the past a lot. He could play in a 2-point stance, which is nice. But hand in the dirt, I think it helps him because he's able to stay low off the line of scrimmage and play to that strength. Having this ability to stunt at a high level is really nice, okay? And there's a lot that goes into this. You're going to have Trey Flowers start inside. He's going to work outside here. He's going to step the stunt. But look at how low he's able to play across the line of scrimmage here. He stays low, keep his knees bent, and then he's able to dip down and split the offensive lineman and Darrell Henderson. Here we go. We're going to talk about athleticism. Dropping into coverage. Here he is on the tight end. And then you're going to have Joe Burrow take off. Well, look at how he plays this. Just look at him right there, okay? He sees the quarterback. Watch him run Joe Burrow out of bounds. All right, Joe Burrow really doesn't get a step here. Now, hey, Joe Burrow's not the fastest quarterback. But you know, there is a guy with a little bit of speed. That's Kyler Murray. We're going to take a look at some of those clips as well in a second. Setting the edge well. This is something that he can do. He can get out wide. Again, sometimes he gets a little, I would say, maybe gritty. He kind of sticks his head in the inside. Someone will bounce it and he won't be there. He has this ability to get out wide. Here he is. I mean, look, it all ties together. Cornerback played well there, so all of a sudden you have him not able to get extremely wide. But he was out there. He was out there with the back on that play. And then here he is against Kyler Murray. Now, he had a pretty good day here. There was 2 games in particular that really stuck out. Cardinals and Vikings, where he just went crazy as a pass rusher. Here he is against the Cardinals. And this play, very early, first drive. I think this was the third. This wasn't the third. No, this wasn't the third down play. But it was the first drive of the game. And this set the tone, if you ask me. All right, Charles Harris. See him setting the edge well. You're going to get a read option for Kyler Murray and James Conner. So he's reading Charles Harris. Now, he's going to decide to keep this thing. All right, he's going to fake the handoff. Charles slides in a little bit for Conner. So Kyler Murray's like, I'm going to take this and I'm going to beat him to the edge. That doesn't happen, though. All right? He moves so well side to side, and you see that here. Okay, just look at this. He's going to run Kyler Murray down on this play. Look at that. Look how quick he runs him down. And I get it. There's other players in there, but that ability sticks out. This is a very common move from Charles Harris. We know the swim move is his go-to counter, but he also loves the rip-through move, and doesn't always work. Andrew Whitworth did a real good job against this, but Humphreys had some issues, and we saw that. So here's an example of him having some issues against that rip-through from Charles Harris. All right, so watch this. The get-off's a little bit jacked up on this play anyway. He's kind of trying to time it up, but that's not his strength. His strength, to me, is his lower body, his ability to bend. He's also very explosive with his arms attacking offensive linemen. So you get the first small step, then he's going to work his way upfield against the offensive tackle. And here's where the rip-through comes into play. Now, when you're doing this rip-through move, they're trying to play half the man. You got to get hip-to-hip with him. You can see that here. You can see the lineman is trying to get his hand kind of on his hip to move him out of the play, push him out of the pocket. But it's going to be that ability to bend, turn himself through the quarterback, and work his way around. Look at that bend. You see that? That's a move right there. Now, he doesn't get the sack, but you got Kyler Murray just flinging that thing straight up in the air. A free rush. Okay, you already know that's going to be an issue. Good scheme. But with that being the case, he's still got to make the play. All right, and he's running directly at him. So to stop, look at how he stops on this. Most guys, I mean, we've seen many guys run right by the quarterback, slip and fall. You see how he's able to stop? and turn and bring and drag him down. And against Humphries on this side, you're going to get this play action. You're going to get this play fake here from Kyler Murray. So he's got to read that. Now, I think one thing is hand placement can get a little bit, iffy. That could be a spot that he could work for sure. And this time he gets a little bit high on the lineman. But you can see he's reading it. Okay, is it a run? Is he going to keep the ball? So he keeps it. Okay, so now all of a sudden he's in pass rush mode. All right, so he's high. He's going to disengage a little bit here. But here's the swim move. This is the Charles Harris go-to counter rush move. All right. So you just saw earlier, he didn't beat him with the rip through around the edge. So what's the counter off of that? Let me show you. I'm going to work around the edge and then flip it and hit you with that spin move. So here we go. Gets his step. Now you got Humphries leaning that way, thinking, okay, I got to get in front of this guy. And bam, hit it with the spin move, counter right off of that. And now Kyler Murray's in trouble. Now he escapes. The spin move is a beautiful counter that's used a ton off of the bull rush. You're not always going to have success with a bull rush in the NFL. You have to be able to counter off of that. I mean, you may have success with that in college because guys are getting up too high and you're just bullying them, right? But that's not the case in the NFL, especially if they know what's coming. They can start to expect that. They can start to play for it. So once you set him up, you have to be able to counter. And I think with his ability to move laterally, being light on his toes, he could probably set up more with his feet. He could add to his game. Now, one area I would say that he could use some work, and you see it on this last play, is he could probably, maybe some yoga. Maybe just more flexibility to just straight up bend. Julian's got that ability to dip, bend, and he just kind of morphs himself real goofy looking. He looks a little bit tighter. He can bend, but he doesn't really have that, flexibility to dip and really work around the edge like that. So maybe a little bit of, yoga, maybe a little bit of Pilates. I don't know what it takes, but maybe just a little bit of that. This time it's run defense again. See how low he comes off the ball on this play? That means he's going to win this leverage battle. He gave Humphries all you can handle in this one. I mean, just look at him here. That looked like some Logan Hall stuff he was watching yesterday, and then to get in there and make the run stop. And this time he tries to go that rip through. David Bakhtiari plays it really well. Unable to open up and get by. David Bakhtiari's kind of got him locked up on this play. But overall, I did like a lot from Charles Harris' season. It was clearly his best year. As much as I like the way that Charles Harris played this past season, and I think he checked a ton of boxes as to why he should be re-signed by the Lions. He's fit the scheme well. He had his best season. He was reliable. He was out there for every single game. He could play both sides of the line of scrimmage. There's so many reasons to point to. Also, when you take a look at this roster, we know that the Lions, they want pressure players. So when you take a look at it, you're not paying a ton to the cornerback unit. Now, the safety, that could change depending on how they go in free agency. Also, Tracy Walker being re-signed, that could turn into their biggest contract. Inside linebacker, we'll have to wait and see. Interior D-line shouldn't be super expensive, aside from Michael Brockers, who I think will be brought back. But with the outside linebacker position, knowing that they have pressure players, it's another reason to point to is why the Lions would re-sign a guy like Charles Harris. However, I do have one pretty big concern with all of this. As much as I like Charles Harris, I have a concern. The Detroit Lions are going to bring in a top pass rusher with their top pick in this year's draft. If the Lions are going to do that, I am concerned with the Lions bringing back Charles Harris, depending on how much he's going to get paid this season. If it's near that market value, I'm concerned it just may not happen. Why? Well, if you look at how this season went, right? Because we're talking about possibly paying a backup here if that top pick comes in and becomes a starter, which you would expect. You would hope that you would get an impact player with the second pick in the draft. You expect when you get a second pick in the draft that he's probably going to be a starter, unless it's maybe quarterback or something like that. Having Romeo coming back, having a possible top 2 draft pick being a pass rusher. If it is a pass rusher, the concern there is that the Lions will be they could be paying a pretty good amount of money to a backup. And look, I'm not against that. However, looking at the Lions this season, when Romeo Okwara was healthy, he played in pretty much every single snap as their outside linebacker. When Trey Flowers was healthy, he played about 60 to 80% of the snaps, and he wasn't always healthy when he was actually out there. On base downs, it's not like the Lions were signing Trey Flowers or Romeo Okwara on the defensive line. They like to have their big bodies, Brockers, Levi, Aleem, Pennicini. They like their big bodies there. And I think the Lions actually addressed that again in this year's draft with another guy like that can play on the defensive line, that kind of player. They like those big bodies. They're not doing that with Trey. Now, obviously, on passing downs, they'll slide those guys inside, and then you could have Charles Harris out on passing downs. But that's the thing, is that his role at that point would be a reserve that rotates in and out. That would be his role. Now, again, you got to plan for the unexpected, because coming into the year, just like this past year, you could look at it and say, well, you'll have Julian Okwara to be that role, and that's fine, and then you'd have your 2 starters. But you got to keep in mind is that that's just not always how the season goes. I mean, we saw this past year with COVID and injuries, you could very easily not have those players. We came in this year thinking, damn, we're going to be deep at edge. But before you know it, we have games where we don't even have edge rushers. We have Jesse Lemonnier as our starter. Now, if you look at top 2 edge rushers, I definitely think Hutchinson has more versatility to slide on the D line, and then he would have the ability to slide in and play a 5 tech. But like I said, on base downs, the Lions aren't asking those guys to do that. They're asking their big bodies to do that. Now, if they're going to a 4-3 type of defense, then Charles, his role would be playing the defensive end. That would still be the same role. Basically, you'd just be sliding in because it's not like he's going to play an outside linebacker in a 4-3 defense. So that's the thing, is that he wouldn't be a starter if you drafted someone this year and you let Trey Flowers go. If you drafted the top pass rusher, you would assume he wouldn't become the starter. Now, if you drafted an edge rusher and you didn't take him in the first round and maybe you waited till second round, third round, then at that point, that player, you know, he may end up starting over that guy because you just don't know, you know, like Julian. You don't know how fast the development is going to go. Julian's improvement gives you is, you know, that on obvious pass downs, you can put him on the field, right? When you know they're passing football, we just need to get more in those situations. But when you put him in those situations, he can get after the quarterback. I mean, if you look at his numbers, if he played the same amount of snaps that Charles did this past year, he probably would have outdid his pass rushing numbers, which is like, whoa, what? Yeah, sacks, because he had 5. One of them was Rodgers taking off and falling down, but he had 5. He had 14 pressures. So Julian showed that, which is expected. He was a round 3 pick. We were waiting for that to happen. But again, you got to keep in mind, he's got to be available. And now 2 straight years, we haven't seen him available a ton. Again, it's nothing against the player. You just need to be able to be on the field, right? That's very important. But he's still on his rookie deal, so he won't go anywhere, as he should not go anywhere. Good pass rusher. Like them more in run defense this year, but Charles Harris to me is the much better run defender than Julian Okwara. So the Lions could lean on the development of Julian Okwara, having Romeo Okwara back, having Austin Bryant, drafting a top pass rusher, and then signing someone. But if they want to get production like Charles Harris, you're gonna be spending that kind of money, right? You're gonna be spending that kind of money because pass rushers cost money. They just do. An expensive position to pay. It is. And maybe you can get Charles Harris back a little cheaper because he was already with you. Or you could go with a guy, like we signed Charles Harris this offseason, to a cheap deal, a prove-it deal, that kind of thing, and have depth in that way. But if you want that proven depth, well, then you may have to spend some. And I think taking a little bit off of this year would make a lot of sense because Romeo, his cap hit's going up, right? Because of how it was set up. Michael Brockers, his cap hit's going up. It's like doubling. So I would think if I'm extending him, I would put less cap hit on this year, push more to 2023. For a guy like Charles Harris to even out the playing field a little bit. Now, they don't hold the 1 pick, they hold the 2 pick. So if they're looking at those top 2 guys, they're saying, oh my goodness, we love, let's say, Aiden, but we're not really in love with Kayvon, then signing him would make sense because then maybe you wouldn't be forced into that. If Aiden goes 1, it's like, all right, hey, we can chill out. If you're like, hey, we in love with both, we feel like both of these guys, we're okay with taking either of them. Both of these guys would be perfectly fine to replace Charles, and I think both of them can bring a lot that Charles brings. I think Aiden's a better run defender. I think Kayvon's more athletic. Aiden's maybe a little bit less athletic, but I think he can still do a lot of the drop things they ask. They both can. Obviously, they're both pass rushers. Now, that was at the college level, but I do think there's a lot that those guys can bring to the table. So that's the concern with me, is that I don't know if Brad Holmes will be willing to pay that much to a guy that may end up being a backup. Now, that depends on where the Lions are looking at draft-wise. A lot of people think that even if the Lions re-sign Charles Harris, they're still going to drop the pass rushers. The way I'd probably look at it is look at re-signing Charles Harris, as long as the contract doesn't get crazy high, re-signing Charles Harris, and the way that I personally see the draft right now, and I haven't got to see Kyle Hamilton fill for 2021 yet, not with the All-22, so I'm holding off on that a little bit, but I did like his 2020 from what I've seen so far. Plus, I know a lot of people have him up there, so I would have just assumed he got better because I know he started to make some plays on the football. He had 4 interceptions. The way I look at it is that Aiden be my number 1 right now. So if that the Jacksonville Jaguars took Aiden Hutchinson, then I would probably go to 2 options. Either number 1, I'm taking Kyle Hamilton, which having Charles Harris then allows me to really feel like I can do that. Or I'm trading back, probably not too far because I don't like trading back really beyond like 2 or 3 spots because I don't love being at 6 back. I don't like it. We did the mock draft. I just don't like the options there for the first round. So maybe just a couple of spots if someone's trying to jump out to take Kayvon, but that's it. And at that point, I would take Kyle Hamilton. Now, if Aiden fell, then at that point, I would take Aiden with the number 2 pick in the draft. And I would be cool with having that depth there, even though I'm paying Charles Harris. I think for the Lions, they do end up re-signing Charles Harris. I think it leaves some more flexibility out there. I think hearing, the Kayvon rumor that came out first, that's the first thing I heard is that the Lions are going to take Kayvon. They may take Kayvon, but being this early, none of this stuff is really true. It could be smoke screens. It could be fake. It's way too early for that. We're not even to the Senior Bowl yet, right? So these are just things being thrown out there. And what did we hear last year? We heard last year the Lions may want Jamar Chase. Cincinnati goes Jamar Chase. How hyped were they to get Penei Sewell? I think that's this Charles Harris situation will be very important when it comes to draft time. Take a look at how much Charles Harris gets signed for and whether or not, of course, he gets signed to the Lions. If Charles Harris signs a deal with the Lions, that's $0.5 million plus a season. If he signs that kind of deal, I think that it tells you that the Lions aren't dead set on, hey, we're taking a pass rusher with these top 2 picks. Not saying who it is, but that's what they're going to do. I would say that they're not necessarily locked into that kind of mode. They could still do it, but they're not locked into they are going to do it for sure. Now, if they let him go and he signs elsewhere for like, you know, $6 to $8 million a year, it'd probably really start to lean towards the Lions are probably going with an edge with their top 2 picks in this draft. Now, if he signs somewhere else for like $10 million, then I'm just sitting back like, dang, okay, well, it's $10 million. I mean, I don't really know if that tells you a ton about the draft because that's a lot of money to pay for a guy that may end up being a backup. So to me, that might just be pushing it over the edge. It's going to have to stay in a certain price range. I think if the price range gets above really maybe 7.5, but really $7 million a year, you know, on average, I think at that point he would end up probably going elsewhere. If the Lions can keep it at that range or maybe even a little bit lower, which would be amazing. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, though. I do think he ends up back with the Lions, or if he chose the Lions then at that point over another team who maybe is in a position to win right now, but they don't have as much money to offer him, then he may choose the Lions in that situation because we gave him the chance and he played so well in this defense. So both sides got to agree to it, but I do think the Lions will offer him a contract. As of right now, I don't necessarily think it'll get too far above $7 million a year because of Julian Okwara and what I saw from him this year. Knowing you have a top draft pick, I do think it gives you some flexibility, but knowing you have a top draft pick in this year, and it could easily be a top pass rusher in this year's draft, depending on how the Lions feel about that. I'm going to go with they resign him, but I think it does tell a lot. We'll see how much he gets paid, and we'll see who he signs to, but I would like to have Charles Harris back at the end of it all. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. What do you guys think? Do you think he gets re-signed? Would you re-sign him? Because I do think this does play an impact on the draft. And I'm out.